Welcome everybody to Destination College. Thank you for joining us. My name is Connie Lucio. Today you're joining A Career Isn't a Straight Line, presented by Capital Group. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A or chat at the bottom. And at the end, make sure you complete and use the code CAREER. Thank you, Capital Group, for leading the presentation. Welcome and joining me, Monica Gonias, to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Hello, everybody. My name is Monica Godinez, and I am both actually a proud Fulfillment Fund alumna, as well as a Capital Group associate. I'll be the moderator today for our panel today, entitled Your Career Isn't a Straight Line, Finding Out What You Love to Do. And I'm joined today by our Capital Group's Unidos community. So we're excited to be here. This is the first virtual College Access and Success Conference that we've been a part of. So we really are honored. And for me as an alumna, it's great to be back to Destination College. As I think about the college students today, I can't help but reflect and think back that there was some time ago that I was sitting right where you are. I was navigating my journey as the first one in my family to step on a college campus and to trailblaze this unknown path that I really didn't know much about. So today as an alumna, along with my colleagues, we just hope to encourage you. We can't imagine to know exactly what you all are going through, knowing that these are some unique challenges you're faced today. But we want to commend you, the college students who are sticking it through, for your resilience and your continuation to pursue your higher education. We stand with you and know that, amid the uncertainties of the schools responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, and even as our country is looking to trying to reconcile with the systemic racial injustice and inequality that we're seeing. As I mentioned, I'm sure it's not easy, but know that you're paving a path for more opportunity for yourselves and your families. So whether you're a college student, alumni, in between, or just checking out this conference, we do hope that the discussion today is helpful for you. So as I mentioned here, we want to make sure that you can locate your chat feature, so you can drop in your questions at the bottom of the screen there, so we can get to them at the end during the Q&A portion of our time together. And also you have a chance to win a gift card if you join in as the raffle. So who are we? We are Capital Group. We are one of the world's largest independent investment managers. Our mission is to improve people's lives through successful investing. We are a global organization. We were founded during the Great Depression in 1931 out in Los Angeles. Our assets under management are to the tune of $2.06 trillion as of December 31st, 2019. So while at Capital Group, I have had the opportunity to meet some incredible associates, 3 of whom I've invited here today with us. Our panel represents a variety of backgrounds and universities from the East Coast to the West Coast and in between. So let me go ahead and introduce to you my esteemed colleagues. First, we have Israel Rojas Moreno. He is a senior consultant in finance. Israel was born in Mexico City, Mexico, and came to the US undocumented. He grew up attending public schools in Seattle, Washington, and was the first person in his family to attend high school, even. So he has since earned his engineering degree from Stanford University and an MBA from Chicago Booth. So thanks for being with us, Israel. Then we have Nidia Durazo Ribella, who's one of our senior business partners in Human Resources, our talent development group. Nidia has 10 years of learning-focused experience and 2 years of industry experience. She holds her bachelor's from Scripps, my fellow Scripsy, and a master's from UC Irvine in the humanities. Thanks, Nidia. Elena Sampson is one of our senior short-term credit analysts. Elena participated in the Associates Program, which is a 2-year series of work assignments across various departments at Capital. She holds her bachelor's degree in women's studies from Cornell University and also was the first in her family to attend a four-year university. She's originally from San Diego, and all of our panelists, like the Fulfillment Fund, actually are based in Los Angeles. So I couldn't be more excited to bring them to the Fulfillment Fund today. So I want to ask the Fulfillment Fund, Connie, you can go ahead and launch that first poll. I have a question to ask. How many career changes does the average person have in a lifetime? Were you able to launch that poll, Connie? I'm just curious to know what folks are thinking, because when you think about career changes, it should pop up on your screen here. We have to wonder. 5, 7, 10, 12. Give it a minute here to see what folks are thinking. How many career changes does the average person have in a lifetime? 70% are, okay, so we're getting a little, okay, we've got the majority of votes. Go ahead and take a guess, So we have 58% that said 7. We had about 19% that said 10, and that margin, tiny 2% there at 12, and then for 5, we had about 21%. It's so interesting, right? It's so interesting because I'm going to give it to you here. So I have 2 answers for this. I had to consider 2 of them correct. So according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there was a report that published in 2019 that used data from the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth from 1979. It examined the average number of jobs for those who were born between 1957 and 1964. So these were people that were age 18 through 52, looking at all their jobs that were held, and the average was 12.3 jobs from 18 to 52 years old. So tiny 2%. But no worries, if you got 10 as well, you were also correct. I wanted to take a look at this particular group. We're talking about college age group. So I wanted to take a look, okay, so about where you are right now at about this age, what is the average there? So if we look at that same survey across education levels, race, ethnicity, and gender, looking at those between the ages of 18 and 34, so that would include the majority of the students today, by this age, you would have already had 10 different jobs. So idea here in the concept is that there's going to be changes. So how do we make the most of them? Understanding that there's going to be changes, we wanted to think about 3 different keys that you might take with you along your way. So these are attributes that are going to come with you throughout your career journey. And we just want to call them out today throughout the panelists' responses to some questions that I have for them today. But just kind of think about these. So the first one I want to call out is skills, education, and experiences. For each job, role, or volunteer opportunity that you have, you're going to pick up some skill sets, you're going to develop, you're going to have some new learnings. So you want to hold on to those. We have values and passions. These are what make you authentically you. It's important to hold on to your values and your passions, and those that, well, they give you a sense of purpose as you will carry those into your career. Next, I want to talk about network of peers, mentors, and support. I know for me, Fulfillment Fund was super life-changing for me. They definitely were a group of my peers and my mentors and support. So I'm picking those up, those key relationships that are going to support your development and your growth. So think about these 3 keys as we have our panelists talk to you today. So I thought I'd start off just by sharing my career, how it wasn't a straight line. And I want to take you back to when I joined the Fulfillment Fund. So like many of you, the Fulfillment Fund met me as a high achiever, as many of you are, but I had limited resources. My grandparents were from a small town in Texas, and they had limited education. So my grandmother had no education, and she didn't go to school at all. And then my grandfather, he went to the 7th grade before he had to help his family by working. They relocated to California to find some work in the orange fields and the plant nurseries out in Southern California, and factory work as well. So although they weren't able to read, they somehow managed to provide for their family, and that included me. My mom was just 15 when she had me, so naturally she had to step out of school and put me first, which I'm incredibly grateful for. She raised me to lean on my faith, to work hard, and to push through hard times. It was my high school counselor, again, thinking about that mentorship and that those networking and leaning on your support. It was my counselor who encouraged me to apply for the Fulfillment Fund scholarship. So once I was selected, there, as you know, all these great services that the Fulfillment Fund provides. So hopefully you'll continue to leverage those. So my first job before college was on payroll, was the Boys and Girls Club. And I just basically played games with kiddos and got paid for it. So sadly that had to end, and I went to Smith College. So matriculating into Smith, I actually was pre-med. I actually was pretty set that I was going to do pediatric work. That was the career for me. That's what I was exposed to, and that's what I thought I would do. I also immediately connected with the Fulfillment Fund students that I knew at Smith, and I joined Nosotras de Smith, which was a Latinx community at that point in time. So for work study, I did dishwashing duty, and I was a muffin maid, as I call myself, just serving muffins in the morning, making sure folks had their breakfast, and cleaned up. So that was kind of my first job. It was just down the hall, and it really worked out to get some income. I picked up another job in the alumni office doing envelope stuffing. So just kind of what was working for me within my schedule. As you know, as a college student, you've just got a ton of things going on. So you got to fit in what you can. So that actually ended up being a networking opportunity. It ended up being an opportunity to go to be hired for the Phonathon, which I wouldn't have known about if I wasn't in the alumni building. That ended up being one of the higher paying positions at the college. So I picked up some really valuable communication skills in the Phonathon training. So moving into my summer, I actually couldn't secure a research or medical related internship or research that was opportunity to work in as to go back home. So I applied to the Fulfillment Fund's summer internship program, and I was placed with something that I wasn't expecting, Wells Fargo Business Banking. It was close to home. It wasn't medical at all, but again, it was an opportunity, and it was what I could work with. So as I worked at the Wells Fargo Business Banking, I actually didn't know that I'd enjoy it so much. So I did. I actually really enjoyed being in that environment, that financial service environment. So I ended up going back to Smith that second year and tried out econ classes, just kind of continuing down that path, trying out those econ classes. Well, my professor started teaching in this new program called Women and Financial Independence. And they launched this new program, launched some lunch and learns. My professor was teaching it, so I went out to support and learn, because really, coming from my background, I really could use that personal finance education. I really was hungry for it. And I was hungry for the free lunch too. We all love a free lunch. If it's free, it's for me. Say it. Even though economists will say there's no free lunch. Well, I attended the sessions, and they needed an office assistant. So there I go, wanting to just know more and wanting to, expand my career horizon. So I jumped in, I got the position, and I was able to serve my, the students by sharing resources on personal finance education. And I joined the investment club on campus. So you can see how it just kind of shifted me completely, really. So I was really kind of enjoying the econ vibe. But I missed family. That is so important to me. So I missed family. I ended up going back to California, and I joined the Five College Consortium there, which was Scripps College, a women's school in California. So there I was an Upward Bound math tutor to local high school students. And that may have been at the voluntary basis. I don't recall if it was a paid or unpaid, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I learned a lot. And then I found out Scripps had a phone-a-thon and they needed people, and it was also a higher paying job. So there I go, transferring my skills over for what I learned from Smith and doing it over at Scripps. So you can see it kind of set me up for this different path. Going into junior and senior year, I considered careers in policy research, philanthropy, wealth management, just different fields. And I was also a new mom. So a couple of things, work-life balance became really important to me. So that's where the Capital Group came in. I did apply to a client service representative as a recommendation from a few of my mentors, including in the Fulfillment Fund. I've been there since. So what can I say? I since have transferred to San Antonio, and that's where I am now. I do some work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and including the Latinx Employer Resource Group, CG Unidos, which are part of the panelists are part of this group as well. And I'm a proud working parent. So that's kind of my background. And I wanted to go ahead and bring it over to our panelists here and get a sense of your experiences. I want to go ahead and ask first, Israel, if you can get us started. Can you tell us about your career path and how did it lead you to Capital Group?
Sure. Thank you, Monica. A lot of parallels in our journey, I think. And like you know, my family came to this country with nothing, certainly no education, and definitely no network, no connections, valuable connections of any kind. And so there's a lot of things they didn't know about how this place works, but they did instill in me some values of hard work and humility. And then they supported my education sort of from afar, letting me go about, figure things out on my own, and trusting me to figure it out. And so that's been mostly my career, has been this big experiment in figuring things out and learning along the way. And one of the key things that I've definitely learned is about the importance and the power of networking. And, you know, to be honest, when I first heard of this thing, networking, you know, it was sort of sounded like a dirty word to me. You know, this idea that you're going out and just meeting a bunch of people and asking them for a bunch of favors, like it was just kind of gross to me. But then I came to learn and understand really what it is. And I'll share a story to help illustrate that. When I was in college, I was part of this organization called Los Hermanos. It's a bunch of people just like me, first generation Latinos, who would get together, hang out, and do some community service. And as part of that group, right, attracted a bunch of people. There were definitely some guys who would flake out on a bunch of things, not show up to anything, not really help out, just wanting to hang out and party. And then there was another group of guys who were much more dedicated, showing up to events and putting in the work. And I was definitely the second in that second group. And as a part of that, through those relationships, through that work, I got to meet an hermano who was an older hermano, and he had grown up in Los Angeles. And after I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to be in Los Angeles, but I didn't have a job. So I reached out to him, and he happened to also have been in this organization with a third person who was in Hermanos, and they had a great relationship. And so he put me in contact with him. He said, hey, go talk to this person. I've already told them about you. You know, send them your resume. And so sure enough, I send him my information. He and I connect. He puts my resume into the right hands. And long story short, I get a job offer in the mayor's office. Fast forward 4 years. At this time, I'm moving to Chicago. My wife is looking to begin her medical school education in Chicago, and so I need a new job. And it just so happens that one of my coworkers that I met during my time at the city of LA, she had moved to Chicago the year before. And we had gotten to know each other very well, established a great relationship. And so she knew me, again, as someone hardworking, trustworthy, reliable. So when she heard I was moving to Chicago, again, she helped get my resume into the right hands, introduce me to the right people. And again, I'm able to get the job offer in the mayor's office there. Well, fast forward 6 years. Now I have just recently left my job with IBM in consulting. And again, I'm looking for new opportunities. And one of my friends from business school, he sends me a link about a job offer or a job opportunity with Capital Group. And I see it, and the only reason I pay attention to this listing is because my best man from college, he happens to be working at Capital Group, and he's always had great things to say about this place. And so I decide to, again, look into it, and I get connected to the right people, get my resume in, and here I am, right? And for sure, nobody's just handing me jobs just because they know me, right? I still have to go through the application process. I still have to earn my spot. But because of that reputation that I established, those relationships that I had built, people were willing to help me out by making introductions and making sure that I was aware of the opportunities that were available. And that's the network that I've cultivated, right? A lot of people who know me, who I know them, and they trust me, and therefore they're willing to tell somebody that they know in their network about me. And that's how your network grows. That's how you meet new people, right? You today, you have your network. Maybe it's a little bit smaller, but you know, the friends that you're working with today, the connections that you're making, that's your network. And the important thing that you want to keep in mind is, right, you're forming relationships about each other, right? There's always, when you're doing student group assignments, there's always some people that you're like, oh, I want that person in my group, because you know that person is hardworking and they get the job done. In contrast, there's some people that you're like, hopefully that person doesn't get stuck in my group, right? This is your network and your reputation sort of building already from the get-go. And to make sure that you have an important and a valuable network, you know, you want to be someone who is doing the job well and putting in the hard work, because that's what's going to help you down the road. That's what I've learned through this career path, and that's how I've wound up here at Capital Group. Thanks, Monica.
Yeah, thanks, Israel. Those are some great insights. Just, being true to your reputation, knowing you're always building skill sets, you're always building those relationships as you go. So important. Elena, do you mind going next? Just kind of sharing your career path and how it led you to Capital.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elena Sampson. Thank you for inviting me to the panel, Fulfillment Fund. When Monica asked us to share about our career path, my first thought was, oh my gosh, how am I going to make sense of my winding path? I landed on focusing on a couple of key threads that have carried me throughout my journey. The first being grounded who I authentically am and letting my natural curiosity really lead the way. So to who I am, I was born to a single mom in San Diego. She's an amazing woman who, despite setbacks, instilled in me the belief that I could pursue anything my heart desires, regardless of circumstance. That meant when I became enthusiastic about attending a performing arts school to become a dancer, she was my champion. When I found an opportunity to be a foreign exchange student to Japan, she encouraged me to travel. Those experiences gave me the resilience to allow my interests to stray far and wide. At university, I was initially a Spanish literature major while also taking some technical classes, because despite being super supportive, my mom also had a not so secret desire for me to become an engineer. Unfortunately, I was listless at college. I was struggling to figure out the point of studying hard. I was in upstate New York. It was cold. And I wasn't lucky enough to have an organization like the Fulfillment Fund to reach back to in order to have mentorship to navigate university. So I dropped out of college and moved back to San Diego. My time away from college, I worked as a legal secretary in a bankruptcy office. It was there that I learned about the power of money, how the richest people I'd ever met could actually be bankrupt. And that tied my interest to financial services. I also learned how important it was to have strong communication skills, both verbal and written skills. So when I returned to Cornell, I doubled down on those communication skills and became a women's studies major. The major required me to write 40-page papers, which I absolutely hated, but needed to do, while also allowing me to have a breadth of classes to fulfill my wanderlust and all of the various interests that I had. To pay for college, those technical skills my mom had encouraged, that helped me find jobs that were well above the minimum wage, which made focusing on my education a lot easier when I went back. Ultimately, those skills I learned on the job, in the classroom, and amongst friends, because to be honest, that's where I originally learned Spanish, were the competencies that made me a strong candidate for Capital Group, where I now work as a credit analyst.
Thanks, Elena. Gosh, it's just so inspiring how you you took just from the beginnings, and I'm just thanks for sharing everything that you did in your experiences and where you weaved in those skills, and just being a senior analyst here at Capital. It's just it's great to hear that, and I know that it has to speak to some students today who are just determining where their path is going to be, and kind of just you have setbacks, you can wind this way or that way. So that's just a great example. Your career is not a straight line. Lydia, do you mind sharing with us today about your career path?
Absolutely, do not mind. Thanks so much for having me. And I'll start my story with, I am a PhD dropout and I'm proud of it. I was on track to be a college professor. I was in a fully funded program at UC Irvine. I'd also been offered admission at NYU to do graduate studies and chose UC Irvine because I'd had this great fellowship offered to me. So here I was in this really amazing program focused on colonial studies in Latin America. So I was looking at texts from 500 years ago and doing critical theory and reading about a history that I was really passionate about when I was in my undergrad. And then, so I got my master's phase, and then I was in the doctorate phase, and I had this moment where I was like, I'm not so pumped about this. This stinks. I want to do something different. Like, I want out. I want to do something else. And having grown up with immigrant parents from Mexico who are very humble and who had a very high regard for education, which they did not have access to, my thinking had been that more schooling automatically equaled better. And that's not necessarily the case. And yes, education is important. So please don't walk away thinking, oh, the lady from Capital Group says higher ed is whack. That's not what I'm saying. But where the track that I was on, I only knew about the greatest hits of careers. So I knew you could be a lawyer, a professor, an engineer, a doctor, but I didn't know there was all this stuff out there. And I'm so happy that my path led me away from becoming a college professor to do the work that I do today in the environment that I'm in now. Which I'll tell you about in our conversation today. So my key drivers for doing the big switch were, number one, I became dissatisfied with the work that I was doing. And while I was teaching classes, I had a lot of fun. I loved connecting with my students, but I didn't like, once I was in that doctorate phase of deep research, how isolated I was. I didn't have a community of people to work with, and I didn't have a practical impact in my work. And that literature that once spoke to me became stale. And I asked myself, do I really want to be rehashing 500-year-old texts again and again that have been combed over by many other scholars? The truth was, I didn't. I wanted to do something more dynamic. So that was the first reason. I wasn't digging it. Once I was in that PhD phase of my program, I wasn't digging it. And then the second realization was that I was in a very saturated field with limited earning potential. And it's not that I didn't have some of this information before going into my program, but it's more that the sort of rude awakening, there were all these chingones and chingonas that were far ahead of me in my program, like as in talented people, and they were hitting the job market and they were striking out. They were not getting tenure track jobs. For every, one good tenure track position, there were 200 applicants. And I had walked into my program feeling really arrogant about myself, like, oh, I'm going to be awesome. And I was really humbled. I was like, these amazing folks are not getting jobs. And the reality is neither am I, or not good jobs with benefits at the end of all of this. And the third was, I was tired of being poor. I also felt I was born poor. I wasn't meant to live and die poor. And if I had stayed in the humanities track that I was on for several years longer in this doctorate program, there'd be no security for me at the end of that. So I needed to do something different. So I leveraged a resource from my college. I went to Scripps College like Monica, and I was able to see a career coach even though I had already graduated. And this was a benefit from having gone to school there. I had multiple sessions with the career coach, and I really took deep inventory of myself and really tuned into and asked myself what resonated with me, my values, my passions, the kinds of environments I liked. And I started to reach out to people in my network to learn. And I mean, really learn. A lot of what Israel said really resonated with me. It was this networking and reaching out to people in my network wasn't about superficial contacts. It was about leveraging them for growth and development and learning and gaining insights from people. And people are very generous with their time when you want to ask them about what they do and what their day-to-day is like and what resonates with them. You know, people are willing to help that way. So anyhow, thanks to taking deep inventory, some good luck, and leveraging my network, my transferable skills and experiences got me my first job in HR. And I was working at a hotel. My teaching experience that I'd had from my academic trajectory translated to training employees. I spoke really great Spanish. I was in the Spanish department doing these colonial studies, so I was able to hire housekeepers and do like onboarding for people who didn't speak English, for my paisanas and my paisanos. And also I had done research I'd been in a research environment, and I had done a lot of interviewing. So that also translated for me to do interviewing for recruitment, for hiring. So I just feel really blessed that I had some transferable skills, and I was able to make that switch from academia to private industry. And so that has led to my progressive career in HR. As far as my Capital Group story, I'll try to make it quick. I was contacted by a recruiter via LinkedIn. I got a message, and I ignored that message for a couple of days. And the reason why is I felt loyal to my leaders and my company. I had gotten a year prior, I had gotten a raise and a promotion, and I'd been invested in. My leaders had put a lot of faith in me and trusted me. And I felt like I was, sort of like breaking that trust by considering a different employment opportunity. And it occurred to me how foolish that was. I thought, if I'm going to choose not to pursue this opportunity, I should at least know what Capital Group is, because I didn't. And so I talked to a trusted friend who I knew would know, because he was, in that financial services space. And he started tripping out. He was like, oh my God, Capital Group. Everybody I went to school with who ended up working there is really talented. And I was like, okay, I have to take this really seriously. And so I did. And here I am over 2 years later in my talent development role. And I'm just really excited that I have a great job. I work with talented people. I've been consistently achieving high performance, and all of this within such a tumultuous and horrible economic environment.
Nidia. And we are so glad you stayed with Capital, because definitely, I know I myself have definitely benefited from some of your coaching. So we thank you for that. I really want to go and leverage this idea of kind of using what you have and leveraging associates. And I want to go back to Elena, because you were talking about so many different roles that you worked through. And I just find that awesome how you were able to, just move into different roles, and just the skills and the education and the experience piece that you were able to thread through. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? If you can talk to us, what are the skills and competencies that you picked up through the different roles you worked in, and how did you manage to overcome those challenges, if you had any?
Yeah, definitely. So you've already heard me talk about 2 sets of skills that I picked up through school, the communications and technical skills. Upon graduating from Cornell, my first job was a solutions engineering consultant. So again, almost my mom's dream. Capital Group found my resume and hired me as a business systems analyst in our technology department. My key to success in those first jobs were leveraging my strengths. My majors had taught me the importance of being able to translate needs. At points, literally translating in meetings a technical person's point of view of how a system would work into the language of business. My primary challenge during that time was feeling confident in my skills. My peers had, computer science degrees and information management degrees. So I was constantly asking myself, what am I doing here? After a few years, my next challenge was figuring out where in financial services my skills were best suited. To figure that out, I changed departments a lot. You heard Monica talk about me being a part of a rotational program at Capital Group. That permitted me to travel to different global offices, take on roles in marketing, strategy, HR, research, and 4 other roles. When I completed the program, I came to see my natural ability to organize and lead others were great skill sets for me to be a project manager. And in that role, I had the chance to travel, work with different teams, and learn quite a bit about our business. But my challenge was I'm not naturally an extrovert. I really yearned to have a role that allowed me to have more quiet time. So today, I'm a credit analyst at Capital Group. That means I look at big companies like Nestle, L'Oreal, Chevron, and I assess their credit worthiness for my company to give them short-term loans. I also look at Latin American banks to make sure that they're suitable for our company to trade with. And I still help out my team when new technologies become available and help them figure out how to use it. So I think my story demonstrates that not being 100% sure along the way of what you want to do next, studying hard, applying yourself, and being open to new opportunities has really provided me an exciting career journey. I honestly have no idea what is in store for me next, but I'm totally excited for the possibilities.
Thanks, Elena. Yeah, we are absolutely glad you're here as well. And we get to learn from you and leverage from all the experiences that you bring. I just want to go ahead and I'm just thinking about so much that you shared. I want to continue with this momentum of, leveraging what we have and kind of learning from one another. Values and passions was a theme that also came through. So I want to ask if Nidia, if you could talk to us about values and passions. You touched on that a little bit when you first presented.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'll go ahead and address this question about what I love about my career. And in my time in HR and over the last several years since I pivoted from my doctoral program, I landed at Capital and I couldn't be happier about the team that I work with. And, kind of different from Elena, I kind of was pursuing something where I could have a group versus be more isolated, and there are different ways you can access that, right? And so for me, working with a tight-knit team and at Capital, who's really talented, really motivated, and really bright, I feel accountable to them, they feel kind of accountable to me, and we have a lot of synergy. So one of the things that I love is working with people. I love that the work that I do is both intellectually and socially stimulating. So one of my key responsibilities as a talent development business partner is that I develop learning solutions for associates. So you can think of it like I am like an in-house teacher, and I tune into what are the needs, what do people want, and then I create classes to support our associates. So I get to research all the time. I get to talk about topics that are about resilience and leadership and really wonderful topics that enrich me and that then I can offer to my colleagues. And that's really fun for me, is that I get to meet a lot of different people in addition to working with my tight-knit team. Also, something I'm really excited about that I get to work on now is, given the greater focus on racial injustice, Capital is focusing more on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And while we had those initiatives previously, I think there's a lot of momentum this year. And thanks to that momentum, I was able to sort of shave off some of my previous work and absorb work that is specifically focused on our DE&I strategy. And right now I'm in the works of creating a mentoring program specifically for Black and Latinx associates at Capital. So I get to use my skills to support a mission that I personally care about and that will help associates like me. And that's pretty awesome. So I would say in terms of values and passions, whether it's your job or the industry that you're in or both, listen to those opportunities that you could have to get to focus on the things that you naturally care about.
That's great advice.
And Monica, did you want me to go ahead and talk about the advice?
Oh, yes, please do. What advice would you give the students in finding what you love to do? Absolutely.
Yeah, so I've been carrying through those threads quite a bit already. So my first bit of advice for the students is you have to know yourself. That's really important. That's taken a long time for me to do, to develop that kind of self-awareness. I hope you get there faster than I did. So I think you can learn new challenges and you can learn new skills and always be open to that. Ultimately, you likely won't fundamentally change your style, the things that energize you, those things that are authentically you, and the things that stimulate your curiosity. So know yourself and know where you have that authentic appetite. And so to develop self-awareness, I think it's really important to ask for feedback. Get mentors. You can have tons of informal mentors in your life and kind of form a personal board of directors for yourself. And look at these people that are more experienced, who you admire, learn from them, ask them for advice, ask them for input, apply it. So that's another important thing, is learn from other people. Pursue new experiences and see every experience as a growth opportunity. I won't take you through the long list of odd jobs that I've done, but listening to Monica, I definitely, a lot of that resonated with me. And so all of those kinds of jobs, even if at the time they don't feel glamorous or you don't imagine that they connect with your long-term career, they do. So take advantage of those opportunities for learning and skill building, and also leverage the network of people that you can access by way of those opportunities to learn more. And I would say, again, going back to asking for feedback, be humble, be open to it, and be open to developing.
Well said. I couldn't have said that better myself. Thanks, Nidia, for that advice. And hopefully students, you can take some of this down, because I'm hearing themes of, transferring your skills, learn from other people, leverage what you have, stand on your reputation. So just all great nuggets of advice that our panelists are giving. I wanted to touch on that DEI that you talked about, Nidia, because in regards to passions and kind of just, not so much passion, but maybe just your interest in the company that you may work for in the future, or an organization you may work for in the future, in DEI and what that may mean. Israel, can I ask you, I know you do a lot of leadership here at Capital. We're so glad that you brought your skills with us and your leadership in Unido specifically. I've definitely benefited from it. I wanted to ask you in regards to DEI, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you? And where does that fit in, if it does, with corporate citizenship?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Monica. I want to zoom out a little bit. Right, we've all touched on our immigrant origins, backgrounds, and right, the reason my mom risked her life, the reason all of our parents made the sacrifices they made, is for this idea of this American dream. Right? This idea that you can start with nothing, and through hard work create a better future for yourself and for your families. Right? That's an idea that was written into our Declaration from the very beginning. Right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And that same declaration also said all men are created equal. And they were very explicit about the men piece, right? First instance of a lack of inclusion right there. And as we've seen throughout history, right, it's been white men at that. And so you've always had this contradiction, right, between what we've said, this is where we want to be as a nation, right, this inclusive place that welcomes everybody, and where we've actually been as a nation. Make sure you can see my hands here, right? And so there's this gap, right, that we've always had throughout the country and throughout history. And so how do we close that gap? To me, that's where diversity, equity, and inclusion comes in. Right? It's both this idea and this process. It's the idea that says, yes, we all deserve to have the same opportunities up here. And it's this process that says, okay, we need to actively lift up everybody else to have those same opportunities, right? And that's how we're going to get there, is through DE&I. And as Nidia was saying, this year more than any other, I think Capital Group has really taken that to heart, to say we want to be active participants in this. And to me, that's super important because, right, I mentioned my work in the mayor's office in the public sector. this is not a problem that just our government can solve on its own, not something that our politicians can do on its own, right? All of us have to be involved, and that includes the private sector, that includes companies like Capital Group, that includes all of us just having conversation. And so that's where this idea that, just because you're a private company doesn't mean you have an excuse to ignore these issues. And as Nidia was mentioning, Capital Group has done a lot of things. I also want to bring in Elena, who's been super involved with a lot of these things and can share a couple specifics about Capital Group.
Yeah, my family also really instilled the importance of giving back time and our money. Thus, it's really important to me to work for a company that contributes to our global communities. To that end, I'm a local lead for Capital Associates of African Descent, as well as a member of Unidos here at work. And I'm grateful that we look for opportunities to donate our time, much like we're doing here today. A member of the Emerging Markets Charitable Contributions Committee, and through that committee, we grant $400,000 to nonprofits annually in the emerging markets, in which my fellow associates act as volunteers and board members. And in LA, as an example, I've been actively engaged as a court-appointed advocate for foster youth for years. And I'm blessed that the skills that I've learned at Capital Group now allow me to serve the youth in my community to help them support their dreams. And to that end, Capital also donates money for the time that I spend in that volunteer work. So I'm glad that for my time that I've been here at Capital, that this has all been a part of a normal part of our business, not something that's just emerged this summer.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think Elena just doing more in our community and representing and being accountable to our community and our world is definitely, I couldn't agree more with yourself in Israel, and we appreciate what you do with Capital and the leadership there. I wanted to go ahead and say thank you for all the great advice that our panelists have shared. And I want to kind of sum up what's been shared. So 3 keys: skills, education, experiences. Then we have the values and passions, and the network of peers, mentors, and supports. So lastly here, I just wanted to share a quick quote from Dr. Chadwick Boseman. Find purpose rather than a job or a career. Purpose crosses disciplines. Purpose is an essential element of you. It is the reason you are on the planet at this particular time in history. Whatever you choose for a career path, remember, the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose. So hopefully that resonated with you a bit. Chadwick Boseman said that at the Howard University speech that he said to the graduating class of 2018.